While the Sandipani was coming into existence, there were two great devotees of Pujya Gurudev. One is Mr. B.M. Kamdar, who built the kutia for Gurudev in Sandipani Sadhanalaya. Later on, his daughter has become the secretary of Pujya Gurudev for his lifetime, Asha Kamdar ji. We will record her memories little later. But the second person is Ram Batra ji. When he lost his great devotee Ram, it is for him Gurudev shed tears, and his devotion is talked about a lot. And I have with me their sons, B.M. Kamdar ji's son, Mr. Vikram Kamdar ji's, and also Ram Batra ji's son, Mr. Rajesh Batra.
Initial years of Gurudev's, your father's relation with Pujya Gurudev, Vikram ji.
As I mentioned that in 57 when they first heard Gurudev's lecture, and then through the Diwan family who lived at Umar Park, they came more in contact with Gurudev and started to listen to Gurudev's Geeta lectures more often. Then in 1959, my father took up the responsibility of organizing this yagna in South Bombay, which was held at the Lloyd's ground, which is today the Wankhede Stadium. And that's when a lot of effort went in there to organize it in a big scale, because it's a big ground. Every yagna had a spiritual picnic at the end of it. And I think we went to Harnai with Gurudev, which was a boat ride down the coast near Ratnagiri. And it was a very pleasant experience that we had. And if you must remember that Gurudev was always called for bhikshas. Gurudev came and the bhiksha happened and normal food was made, and on the table there was a thali put for him, and the others who were invited were there, and Gurudev sat on the table to have his food. So then he asked my mother, where are the others? Why aren't they coming? She said, no, they will come later on because their meal is different. This is what different is my meal. Since Gurudev, I mean, you've not had lasan and onion in your... He said, who said I don't eat that? So please, everybody come and join us. So that was quite a revelation as to the openness of Gurudev's interaction with his devotee.
Yeah, Vikramji, one question I would like to ask you here is, see, those days, concept of Geeta Yagnas or Upanishads is very new to the society, isn't it? So here to organize, how difficult was it for your parents?
Oh, it was a daunting task. But I must say that, you know, like the association of Mr. Ram Batra, and I think at that time Mr. Jamnadas Murjani was also there. Then there was Mr. Sadajivatlal from Chandu Alwai, and there was Mr. Rajnath, and a lot of our business friends and corporations were contacted and explained how beautiful this is and got them all together. And once the lecture started and people started coming to it, then I think it was just an addiction. I mean, people could not do without listening to Gurudev, because understandably that one, it was English, so that a lot of people in a different class of society could sort of understand the Geeta the way Gurudev explained. Plus he interceded his lectures with a lot of humor, which broke the monotony of having the thing. And I do remember that when Gurudev used to explain a point, now in Sanskrit, it is a verse which explains 1,000. So Gurudev had to expound on it more and more. And there was a time when he said that, supposing my wife, my child and I did something, etc., etc., and he'd explain it. And I remember after the yajna, some people would come and ask me, Gurudev is married? No, this is a way of explaining, you know. And there was a time when he would also say that how you sort of, your karmas help. He said that supposing I'm today Swami Chinmayananda, but in my past, I was a murderer.
Oh my God.
And I was not detected till now. And I'm sitting on the stage here as Swami Chinmayananda giving you a talk. And they have recognized that I'm that person. They will come and arrest me and put me in jail. But because of my behavior, I will get a pardon, and therefore your karmas have to be good. So again they'd ask, did Swamiji do anything that was wrong? So this was the initial reaction of people before they understood what Gurudev was really sort of in a lighter plane with talking to the people. So that made it very interesting for the old as well as the young
Right.
to come and listen to this. And since the earlier stages, the lectures were for 21 days. You had a lot of time to make notes, write your comments, and then have the interaction with other people to understand and expand on what you have heard.
I heard initial years when Gurudev would take text or something like that, he would ask questions. He would ask the public questions, and sometimes he would give exams, correct all the papers and send it across, which is not a easy job when he himself is doing so much of work to give examinations, to correct the papers. It's a, real big task. And I think that's where he could connect with people, with devotees very easily. And Rajesh, tell me about your father's bonding, how he got bonded to Gurudev.
So, as I said earlier, he met Gurudev through Vikramji's father. And my early memories as a young child was we used to go to Gurudev's yagnas, which in those days used to be held in South Bombay, either at Cross Maidan or Azad Maidan. And as he got more involved with and closer to Swamiji, as he was known at that point, he actually got involved in all the because at that was the time that the Chinmaya Mission had just begun its journey, and it is today because of all the actions that that Swamiji took in the 60s and the 70s. So whether it was setting up the whole ashram here, building the temple later, building the various schools and hospitals across the country. And I remember my father used to tell me that he used to sit with Swamiji, and Swamiji used to just one day get a bright idea that I wish to set up a school in this part of Kerala or Coimbatore or wherever in the country. And my father would be astounded and say, how are we going to do this? Because we don't even have the land, we don't have the funding, we don't have the resources. And he used to say, Swamiji used to tell him, Ram, we will do it. And he says, lo and behold, 6, 12, 18 months later, the dream would come to fruition, and there would be that what we dreamt of we could see in reality. And then he said, I would go back to Swamiji and he would look at me, Ram, we did it, didn't we? So he says it was amazing, that positive energy and that drive that he had, that he would drive all the people around him, like Vikramji's father, my father, and Vikramji mentioned the core group around him at that time. And they would all get together and selflessly work and make sure that one by one these dreams of Swamiji could be realized. And today, as we all know it, the Chinmaya Mission is spread all over the world, runs schools, hospitals, programs, and so many things. But the seed of all this was born at that time. And I think if one looks back, one cannot even believe that this has actually come to fruition.
As children, Vedanta would not fascinate. It would be very boring, and that too, to go to a Swami would be even more boring. But how did it make, how did Gurudev make it very interesting for you all? And as kids or as teenagers, how enjoyable was it for both of you?
So, Bombay in those days was not the city it is today. Powai, from where we stayed in South Bombay, I was talking to Vikram in the car driving over, and he used to drive Gurudev here very often post the Bhiksha and the Yagna. It used to take us maybe 20-30 minutes to come from South Bombay to Powai. So it was quite normal, and in those days there were no other distractions that kids have today. So the idea of a family outing it was more like we are going for a picnic or a Sunday outing, and we would come here once in 3 weeks on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, where my father would sit with Gurudev in the kutia, which his father designed and built, and they would discuss their plans, and we as children would run around and play games and be left to be looked after by the devotees here and be fed, and so for us my memories are this was just a fun place to come to and spend the morning. And we were young children. My brother, in fact, is much younger than me, and he used to be scared of Swamiji because of his big beard. So every time he used to come, he used to, run out of the kutia, and we had to catch him and say, So lovely memories, and that's how we grew up. And I think somewhere, because we were coming here and being surrounded by all this positivity and that somewhere in our psyche this got embedded, and later as we grew up we got more interested in the teachings of Gurudev, which we realized much later as we became teenagers and older than that.
Fantastic. Now both of you should describe how the temple had come up, because this year happens to be the 50th year of
what
temple.
I'd like to interject over here is that I remember the initial stage when meeting Gurudev, like Rajesh was saying, that the 61-62 Yagna, which was in Cross Maidan, the CCMT started in 1961.
CCMT? Okay.
And this land was donated by Ms. Sara Swarup, because we were looking for. And Gurudev's intention was to train people in the knowledge of our Vedas and our scriptures, to spread it all over the places. So the brahmachari and the thought of starting the Sandipni Sadhanalaya was like a college to train people to know our scriptures and the Vedas. And he very clearly told me that they would come here, learn this, spend the time, and can go back to their families and inculcate these values into their own work and family life. So you didn't have to sort of become a brahmachari or a sannyasi because you were in sadhana. Right? You go out and do it. And that is the concept at which this whole institution started off like.
Right, yeah.
And when I was to drive Gurudev from Bombay to here, like say 20-25 minutes, in the dead of the night, this is after the Bhiksha, which is maybe about 10 o'clock or so, the two of us would have this conversation all along. And at which time Gurudev also gave me a history of his life as to what happened in his college days and how he came up, and why he went into Kashi and how he found his guru, etc. etc. So I remember the architect for this whole complex was one Mr. Nadkarni.
Architect and the engineer was Janardhan Rao.
Nadkarni was there, one who was also there, and Janardhan. So I remember those days when he used to come over here. This is barren land, and of course, like Rajesh says, our visits used to be here very often. And you remember that Gurudev was very accessible to us, because every time, like he says, he's going to the kutia and sit to his feet. And after the kutia was made, there was this hall made, extended, where then they had small meetings, etc. So the memories are very pleasant, and I think that when you are even just sitting in the presence of a divine soul like this, you don't have to even exchange words.
Very true.
You vibe the vibrations which come up there. And hopefully we are continuing to use that in our life.
My earliest memories of the temple were coming here with my father as the temple was being constructed and seeing it from ground up to what it finally became. After that, I had the good fortune of, for my brother and I, both had our thread ceremony at this temple in Swamiji's presence. So I remember I must have been 15 or 16 at that time. My brother was 10 or 11. And we had a large gathering of all our family members and Swamiji's devotees, since he happened to be in town. And we had the thread ceremony at the temple. And then the next big event that I had at the temple, so my father passed away in 1981 in August. And I was engaged to be married in May of that year. And the date and my engagement ceremony was held at the temple again in the presence of Swamiji. And it was on the 1st of May in 1981, so it was a hot summer's day. And there were maybe 1,000 people who had come for, because my father had so many friends and well-wishers, and so did Swamiji, obviously. And then there was a big lunch organized at the temple where everybody was then fed. Post that, my father passed away in August. My wedding was fixed for the November of that year. And obviously after my father passed away, we were not sure whether we go ahead with the wedding so soon after, or whether we take a decision to postpone it for some time due to this tragic event. And my mother consulted Swamiji, and Swamiji said that since Ram has fixed the date, you have to go ahead with the date. And so obviously none of us were in any mood to have celebrations. So then we decided, and we had our wedding also at this temple in Swamiji's presence. So we had a small wedding with close family, friends, and we were blessed to have Swamiji at the wedding. And so this temple has a lot of fond memories for me personally, because all important events, so to say, in my life have taken place here. And when I look back and reflect upon it, I think really fortunate to have the blessings of Swamiji to be present physically at these events. And he gave a really wonderful talk at my engagement ceremony on what is marriage and the significance of marriage. And it was a 10-minute discourse, which I think every couple should listen to, because it's before they get married, because it has the lessons of what a marriage is about and what it means to people. So those are my memories of this temple.
You have to share with us.
We'll be happy to share. Yeah, I'll be happy to share.
That's right. And Rajesh, please tell us about your father. Like I heard that, when Gurudev had heart attack, that he prayed to God, to give Gurudev suffering to him, something like that.
That's true. He was so attached to Gurudev that he would obviously pray that Gurudev came through that ordeal, and whatever suffering which he had to endure would be passed on to him rather than to Gurudev. And I do remember after he had his heart attack, I think it was in the early 70s. In those days, there were no sophisticated medical procedures like you have today, like bypass surgery or angioplasty. So he had his heart attack, and it was quite common in those days for doctors to recommend that you convalesce by resting for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on how severe the attack has been. So again, my father brought Gurudev to our home. He stayed with us for those 4 or 5 weeks. I was a young teenager at that time. I had to move out of my bedroom for Gurudev to come and occupy it. And I had to sleep on a mattress in my parents' room, which I'm sure I must have been pretty angry about at that time, but I don't remember. Time heals those wounds. And so we had, again, Gurudev living in our house, and every evening, as he got better, his devotees used to come from the ashram. We used to have bhiksha, and we used to have bhajans, and Gurudev used to give a short talk for 10 or 15 minutes. So I think we were all blessed, even in adversity like that for Gurudev. We had the benefit of his company and his teachings in our own home.
He used to call my mother Jagata Janani, which means the mother of the world.
Pushpaji.
His term to my mother was Jagata Janani. And my father, he called Daddy all the time. And as Rajesh is saying, that we looked forward to Gurudev coming and staying with us. And I very clearly remember that every time he left, there used to be tears in our eyes. So really go and, there used to be tears in our eyes that a member of the family is going away. That my father and Mr. Ram Batra had together. He was like a son to my father. And my father passed away in the year 1979 in February. And strangely enough, it started off because Mr. Batra had become the sheriff of Bombay, and my father had organized a dinner felicitation for him on a Saturday at the Willingdon Club. And my father at that evening slipped and broke his hip bone, and he was not able to attend the party. And at the time of his surgery, he passed away in the operation theatre in 1979. And in 81, Mr. Batra, so Gurudev lost two stalwarts.
Definitely.
2 years.
Yeah. See, one thing I heard, like, if Gurudev takes a stand, it's Gurudev's stand. Nobody would dare go and tell him, no, Swamiji is something else. But your mother, Pushpaji, all of them, they had their own say,
Yes.
in their own way. So, I mean, we can imagine like how different was their relationship with Gurudev, where they could also convince him. Is something amazing, Rajesh ji.
Because these were the people who were around him at the beginning of the journey. So I guess he had that affection, or he would listen to these few people who were his core group when he was at the beginning building this great institution.
Yes, true. True. I remember like Pushpaji once in Sidbari, Gurudev, his handwritten notebooks, all those things, he wanted to put it in the fire. Okay, and they felt that they were very precious. So the secretary Padma Shri from Bangalore, she went and told Pushpa Amma and Nambiar Amma. They could convince Gurudev and they could stop it.
Yeah.
So Vikram ji, as you said, Gangeshananji Maharaj and all these people, Gurudev met Gangeshananji, and Gangeshananji came to the temple also here. Have you seen Gurudev and Gangeshwarananji Maharaj together?
Gurudev was there. I was saying when they celebrated Gangeshwarananji's 108th birthday, I think, at the Oval Maidan. Gurudev was there as one of the saints which was there to felicitate Gangeshwarananji.
So now to conclude, how would you describe Gurudev as in your life?
I think a huge influence, and obviously in our subconscious, I think both of us, what we are today, we owe a large part of it to the way he formed a part of our lives when we were children and later. And through our parents, we learned his teachings. And so I think to that extent, we've had the benefit which a lot of the modern generation don't have, that we were taught, we were brought up in a world which was much simpler, and we were taught that beyond your daily activities, there is some higher force, and therefore you need to be cognizant of that in and through what you do. So I'm sure all this is, and by attending his various lectures and reading his publications, and nowadays you have the benefit of channels like YouTube where you can actually just go on and listen to his lectures. So it's wonderful to relive some of the things that we have heard. So I think obviously since he had a massive influence on our parents' lives, a lot of that has rubbed off onto us, and what we are today I think is benefit of those experiences.
So he became a major source of inspiration for you throughout your life.
And continues to be, I think. That inspiration has not...
I mean, it's also being with Gurudev that you know that you have to be a karma yogi. You have to do your actions. You have to do your actions, do your correct actions. Don't look for the fruit. Go on in your life. Do the best. So those are the principles that you still imbibe, and in every sphere of one's life, whether it is family or whether it's work, these are the things which will always remain.
Yeah.
And
He will be part and parcel throughout. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For you both.
it was so nice
Yeah,
to
so-
have reminiscence about somebody who's been so influential in our lives.